U.S. economy is in a depression, the worst crisis in 70 years, and the so-called experts had no clue it was coming. They now admit that there's something terribly wrong. Liberals decry the casino of Wall Street and call for new regulations, but the cause of the crisis is much deeper than that. This video explains how this happened and asks what we can do about it. It shows that the capitalist system itself is to blame and must be replaced to break the cycle of boom and bust that ruins workers' lives. Total unemployment stood at over 17% in October of 2009. Urban black youth unemployment stands over 40%, not including the millions in jail. Over 2 million have recently lost their homes, 3.5 million are homeless, 40 million residents are below the poverty line, and 47 million have no medical coverage. Those who are covered receive some of the worst medical care in the world. Education is being cut over and over again to the point of illiteracy for many. The housing bubble was actively promoted by the Federal Reserve to encourage consumers to spend, a process Alan Greenspan, head of the Federal Reserve, called facilitating the extraction of some of the equity that homeowners have built up over the years. How did all this happen? Is it greed, like Bernie Madoff or the Lehman Brothers Bank? No, really the problem is much deeper than a few greedy individuals. The origin of the crisis lies in the decline of manufacturing, the key engine that spurred growth in all other sectors. When they were no longer profitable, investors sought better returns and riskier investments such as .com and mortgage bubbles. When the bubble of fake values in the housing market burst, a financial crisis ensued, throwing workers out of their homes, ruining the banking system. Dozens of mortgage and banking companies collapsed, trillions of dollars of capital and worker savings disappeared. The crisis is characterized by a shrinking economy, which fell at the rate of nearly 6%, and a loss of jobs of over 6 million from October of 2008. The collapsing economy presents workers with a challenge. What can we or anybody do about it? Alternatives have been to bail out the failing banks or industries, or some suggest reform the banking system with better regulations, or vote in a new president, or how about changing the basic economic system? As for the bailouts, the government printed money to save the banks, handing over trillions of dollars with no questions asked. Hyperinflation follows. Meanwhile, the bankers pocketed the money for huge personal bonuses and are still not lending money. The economy continues to slide. The bailouts saved the banks, but not the economy. Capitalism is a worldwide system, so it inevitably spread to the rest of the world. The $14 trillion financial losses in the crisis are so enormous it's hard to imagine them. A trillion depicted here dwarfs the man next to it. While the government couldn't find money to rebuild New Orleans or for education, it spent $1,140 million on military and bailing out the banks and auto companies combined in 2009. The U.S. economy is in permanent decline. U.S. manufacturing has been on a downward slide due to increased competition from abroad for decades. All the economy indicators have headed in the wrong direction. More profits come from finance than manufacturing, showing a poor potential for growth and jobs. The U.S. deficit is at an all-time high, weakening the appeal of U.S. bonds. The balance of payments is unfavorable, and the U.S. owes everybody. Because of these factors, the dollar is losing value, the profit rate is steadily declining, and is now at, who knows? Cutting jobs cuts consumers, so there's a crisis of overproduction. The profit rate of manufacturing has been dropping steadily since 1964. The decline of profits in basic manufacturing is associated with increased productivity and decrease in the size of the workforce. Less and less of U.S. profits come from manufacturing. Meanwhile, productivity has increased fivefold since 1950, meaning that 1/5 the number of workers is needed to create the same number of goods as were needed in 1950. The automobile industry, which used to drive the whole economy, can't compete with the newer factories, cheaper labor, and lower overall costs in Japan, Germany, and Korea. Practically every other manufacturing industry is in shock, trying to compete with China. As a result, profits in American manufacturing industries have fallen, and mighty General Motors has gone bankrupt. The investment has flowed into financial industries such as mortgage and insurance. Unable to sustain growth, this sector collapsed as well. What we are seeing is the falling rate of profit in action. Marx said that the law of capitalism is for the tendency for the rate of profit to fall. The reason for this tendency is competition from other capitalists. To keep up with the competition, manufacturers pour on more automation, and cut in the labor force. But this lowers profits because profits are generated by workers' labor. Machines make workers more productive, but they don't create new value. This is why products generally become cheaper when they are produced with more advanced machinery. The more machinery, the less profit. This is because all value stems from labor, the labor theory of value. To illustrate this, consider the way prices have fallen with automation and mechanization. Contrast the price of the first computers, which cost millions, with the machines produced today. Seeing their profits fall, the capitalists tried to solve their problem in various ways. Automation, lowering wages, union busting, moving to factories in low-wage regions, and changing to other forms of business. But lowering costs means job loss, which leads to fewer buyers for goods, which leads to lower profits, which leads back to lowering costs again, creating a vicious circle. Capitalists must accept higher risk to keep up with the competitors, but they cannot manage risk because of the anarchy built into capitalism. The capitalists don't plan production or cooperate to invest in reasonable businesses. Capitalists must compete and grow or they will be defeated by other capitalists. There is no choice. It's like a marathon with no goal line. The runners must keep running and running until they fall down. There's always someone else to pass them up. The new capitalists who just started running past the worn-out older capitalists. One consequence of this competition is overproduction. Too many goods and too few buyers is the eventual result of capitalist anarchy. The main source of profit becomes speculation, not the real economy that produces goods and services. The housing bubble produced a fourfold increase in the number of houses, and it was the last gasp before the 2007 collapse. There is a crisis every few years from this process, resulting in depression, bankruptcy, and war. Is regulation the answer? Would regulating solve the problem? No, reform is coming because the Treasury Department consists of former Goldman Sachs and other bankers. Treasury Secretary Geithner takes his cues from his former employer Goldman Sachs, with whom he is in constant contact. Second of all, because of the declining rate of profit, boom and bust cycles have repeated themselves for 4 centuries. Nothing has been done but to hand bankers over trillions of dollars, no questions asked. If bailouts and banking reform won't work, what about voting in change? Obama ran on a platform of dramatic change, but when he got into office, he didn't change anything. He expanded the war in Afghanistan and Pakistan, handed money to the Wall Street bankers who caused the bubble in the first place and wrecked the economy, handed money to the auto industry without addressing their inability to compete fundamentally. Did nothing about education and is in the process of creating a giant payoff to the insurance and drug industries, calling it healthcare reform. It's not because Obama is evil and we should have voted in somebody else. Obama is a centrist and an imperialist, but the problems are deep in the system, and no government official or regime can or will overcome them. Also, the most powerful group in the U.S. is the capitalists, not the politicians. Wars for oil and other resources are essential to capitalism because capitalists have to destroy competitive economies. War creates a clean slate, eliminates overcapacity of good, resets the profit scale, destroys the competition, and incidentally causes millions to die in massive destruction and misery. But war is the ultimate stimulus package used freely by the capitalists when times get tough. The crisis of the major capitalist powers increased the rivalry with each other and increased the importance of war, especially war for critical resources like oil and oil pipelines. As a strategy to defeat capitalist rivals, the U.S. aim in Iraq and Afghanistan was to control oil and gas and the pipelines that deliver them, thus a powerful weapon against the United States rivals. But capitalism will always lead to crisis and war. It continues an endless up and down path unless the workers overthrow the system. It is up to us to organize the revolutionary movement and stop this madness. New reforms are not achievable because reforms, even if they succeed, keep the basic problems intact. Look for Progressive Labor Party activities in your area.